G'day world, Chris Hogan coming to you from the Me Media studio here at Burleigh Heads for episode 112 of Get Fact Up. Today, my guest is Mick Hase. He's the chief sipper from sipforsip.com. How are you, Mick?
Mate, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming, mate. So we were just talking about what inspired me or what ignited the conversation to get you on the show.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we had some connection in the past, and Sip for Sip, the name actually intrigued me. So first of all, can we start off by explaining what Sip for Sip is all about?
Yeah, great. So Sip for Sip is a project that I set up about 18 months ago using coffee to impact the world's water crisis. It came from an idea where I wanted to get involved in some kind of e-commerce business. I like the idea of running a business off a laptop, that kind of entrepreneurial kind of idea of let's go sit on a beach somewhere and run a business. Yeah. So, a few years ago, I made a decision that any business I was involved with needed to have some kind of social or purpose-driven impact to make a difference in the world. So, yeah, I kind of was sitting around trying to figure out, okay, I want to create an e-commerce business. It needs a product that everyone's into, but it needs to create some kind of impact. So Sip for Sip came after some brainstorming around let's create some impact where if we sell coffee, the transaction offset is that we donate water to people in need. So initially it was called Mad Coffee, so Make a Difference Coffee, with a Sip for Sip program was the giving program through the business model. But Mad Coffee's actually got a bunch of domain names already out there, particularly in the States. So it was kind of an SEO decision to get away from something that was already being used. And Sip for Sip's got a bit of a better twang to it, I reckon. There's a bit more theme and branding in that word.
It's intriguing.
So, yeah. So settled on Sip for Sip, and the overall aim is to impact 1 million days worth of water supply for people in need by the end of 2023. We're up to 21,000, so in the first 14 months or so.
Any specific country?
Yeah, so we work with two projects in particular. One's in Ethiopia and one's in Malawi. They are both in very rural kind of areas of those particular countries, providing sustainable water solutions to villages where there are none. You know, I guess the story that we all hear about people having to walk kilometres just to get water. It's often the women. Very, very dangerous for them to do that. And obviously then, it's not just about drinking water, it's about sanitation and, removing waterborne disease and things like that. So the projects that we work with, we're connected to them through Buy One, Give One, who I was exposed to and worked with about 10 or 12 years ago. And the process that B1G1 work is that their projects are heavily vetted, and 100% of the money that we use from Sip for Sip through to our projects gets to the projects. So we're working in a very authentic, a very transparent way with these programs. And then we're tied into a few other little ones that we do. We might do some campaigns to say, hey, come and subscribe to our newsletter. And everyone that subscribes, we're working with another one in Cambodia, same type of thing, a water offset. But basically the premise is we have some great coffee, and every time we sell a 250 gram bag of beans, it's a month's worth of water.
Beautiful.
That's how easy it is.
Yeah, that's right. And I love B1G1 because it does give you those tangible numbers that you can use to align your purpose against. And that's what people actually need. Like, I'm a massive supporter of Livin'. And also a denim company called Outland Denim, who are saving people's lives in Cambodia by getting them out of like the slave trade, the people selling business.
Yeah, sure.
And putting them and giving them a career. And it's really hard to put some tangible numbers against both Livin' and Outland Denim for that matter. So. It's really good when you can actually say in your marketing message, buy one of these, this is what it does.
Yeah, sure.
This is the direct impact. And that's something that I talk about with clients all the time, that it's great to have a purpose beyond profit.
Yeah.
But if you can't articulate it in a really like clear and succinct way for the consumer, they're not really sure how much they're impacting. And it's very important with I guess, international, purposes or charities that you're supporting, because they're probably never going to actually physically see the impact.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so do you ever get any, while it's such a great thing that you're doing,
Yep.
do you ever get any like things like, well, why don't you support people locally? Do you ever get anything like that?
Not directly. I think I've certainly gone looking for those answers. So I've perhaps manifested it through the questions I've asked people to try and say, hey, maybe I should be working with the Australian-based challenges that we've got in this country. Again, with some of our offset campaign stuff that we've done time to time, we have supported some projects in Australia where one in particular is educating Indigenous kids in communities through digital education in outback remote communities where there are no resources to do that. But I also, through some of my other projects or businesses that I'm into, I do some stuff in Australia through those guys. So I kind of offset my, I don't know if it's guilt, but my spread to make sure I'm kind of, at home and overseas as well. We did an interesting thing. So initially Sit for Sit was set up to do a similar thing to, say, Vino Mofo Naked Wines, where you may buy, say, a box of 12 wines from Vino Mofo. If anyone doesn't know Vino Mofo, get out there. They're awesome. And they have a charitable aspect to their checkout as well. But yeah, you'll get a box of, say, red wines, and you'll have red wine from a whole bunch of different wineries. So the initial plan and how we launched was we partnered with roasters all over Australia. And basically you'd buy a kilo of us and they'd be 4 different roasters' coffees. We've just pivoted away from that because the viability of running the business that way, that unfortunately the margins in coffee aren't as good as they are in red wine, into our own purpose-driven and purpose coffee beans. So we've now got our own blend. But during that pivot process, I did some customer feedback. So, Business 101, ask your customers if they'll actually hang out with you.
Beautiful.
If you change. And, and part of that survey, apart from saying, hey, if we do our own coffee, are you going to stay with us? One of the questions was, are we transparent in enough and in our giving outcomes? And are we communicating that with you correctly? And assessing some of those questions. And, are you comfortable with the projects that we're working with? And it was like 88% across the board, somewhere between 85 and 90, but it was averaged at about 88% across those 3 key questions around our impact. People were really happy with it. So I can certainly understand that there is a definite need for things to be contributed to here in Australia. But at the end of the day, when there's 600 million people in the world that don't have access to water, it's kind of like, it's like, kind of that's kind of our answer, or my answer to that is go, okay, I'm going to fix this problem or contribute to fixing this problem first. And as we grow as a business, there are definitely plans for us to integrate other projects, because it is easy through Buy One Give One to find projects. They do all the vetting and everything for us. So, and there's like 800 of them. There's heaps here in Australia.
It's just b1g1.com.
So, the plans are to bring out some merch, some Sit for Sit merch. So, every time we sell a T-shirt, something great will happen in the world. There is a bit of a plan, although whether I've got time to actually make this happen, it's on the goal board. It's do some things where we get some baristas in to teach people how to, make coffee at home, do some videos. That's technically education, so we'll tee that up against an education project, which more than likely will be here in Australia, and integrate some other projects involved. But primarily, it's water at the moment.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, how did you come to understand your own personal values, your own personal purpose, and then align that to your business, your vehicle? How did that sort of come about?
I don't know. I ask people a similar thing when talking to the other purpose-based brands around what was your aha moment, because often people have this aha moment where they switch their values. I didn't really get one of those. Mine was a bit over a bit more time, where maybe there was some tiny little aha moments that came along, and then it kind of just went, all right, this is the way I need to go. But yeah, look, it was back in the college days where you and I first met, where I first was introduced to B1G1 and Paul Dunn and that whole idea of reciprocity and giving without the expectation of getting anything in return. And my engagement up until that point with anything around giving or charitable connections was always very ad hoc. So say a friend's doing Movember, he's $20, $50 for Dry July. I might do Dry July and Movember once a year or something.
Well, yeah, there's only sort of 1 July and 1 November. Anyway,
well, I'd pick one or
no,
the
I'm
other.
joking.
Yeah, I wouldn't do both. Yeah, so very ad hoc, which I think everyone can relate to, right?
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not a fan of the guilt trip of the charity industry that's come through the 80s and 90s and the way that whole industry has been built. So I understand, World Vision and organisations like that do fantastic and amazing things. But for so long, their story has been this guilt thing. It's like showing the child in Africa with the fleas on its nose and it's, literally about to die. And it's kind of like, if you're, you need to do this.
Yeah.
You bastards
Yeah,
kind of thing. It's your fault.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about the B1G1 message was it's very much in that positive side. It's not about money. It's about impact. It's what are the impacts that you're creating. And I think they're up to like 200 and something million impacts now. It's huge.
Crazy, yeah.
And so that kind of opened my eyes a little bit further to the idea of, okay, giving and being socially aligned to projects can be a really positive thing. And it can also be about what is the value that you're creating. It's not about me trying to fix my guilt. And so over some time with that, that kind of festered in me a little bit. I had some fun kind of, I was the go-to guy in my job at that time, kind of chairing the B1G1 relationship because I just loved it. I said, okay, I'm the guy to do that. Let me do it. And thanks to John and Danielle Mailer for giving me the openness at the college back then to just say, right, it's yours, off you go. And, so there was some great leadership there and some fostering of my kind of want to explore that from my workplace. And then over time, just some personal things that came up that made me go, okay, maybe there are better ways to do things. Becoming a dad probably is a part of it as well. Like you start to realise that it's not all about yourself and you have to think about other people and there's two little people hanging around. So, and then in 2016, my wife got really sick. So she had cancer and she's okay now, but that was a really challenging time for us. And I think during the end of all of that adventure, I went, right, life's too short. We got to do some stuff that actually puts a smile on dials and make some cool shit happen. So I actually had a crack at setting up a charity back then called $1 a week, which was just kind of my first step into, okay, I want to be the catalyst for making shit happen rather than just joining in someone else's thing. I'm a bit of a, born leader in that way. I understand that that's one of my strengths.
I don't think you're alone in that space. So. How many charities exist in Australia?
Oh, yeah. Like, I get it. I'm definitely not alone. But I learned some great lessons in doing that. And but that further fostered the idea that, hey, there are actually, maybe a charity is not the right way to do it. Let's look at, and then at the time, so that was around 15, 16, 17, this word of social enterprise starts coming out. Thank You Water are doing their thing, and you start going, oh, well, hang on here. There's the millennials are starting to say, hey, you need to do business better, or we're not going to buy from you. Things are starting to change, and so that's where I went, all right, rather than a charity, which is really hard to run as a startup with no money, and then trying to work out, well, how do I get money to run the business when the charity's 100% of the, I was kind of taking that same model where I'm not taking a clip of the donations. I got to find money elsewhere, whilst trying to run a business and have kids and blah blah blah. So my wife's like, "You're crazy. What are you doing? You're just gonna burn out."
Yeah, it's hard to be altruistic when you're not profitable.
Yeah. So then the idea was like, okay, well, rather than charities, which is there's a lot of red tape and it's really difficult. Let's look at a business model that actually creates amazing impact and is profitable, and is economically sustainable, but set out to create amazing things. So, and that's where, okay, sip for sip, let's rock and roll. And the whole business is set up with impact-driven KPIs. So it's not about how many dollars are we going to make this month, it's how much water are we going to give away. And obviously that critical number feeds back into sales because they're connected. But anyone out there that's thinking about how do I bring purpose into my business and create impacts within my business and sales engine is just add add purpose-driven KPIs. It's the only way to do it, and it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks for doing that sales message for me, because that's what I talk about probably in the first meeting with every client is that what's your purpose beyond profit. And
Cool.
one of the things that is, I think, pertinent in that conversation though is that not everybody has to, align themselves with a charity. It's not having a purpose beyond profit can be just beneficial to the client.
Oh, sure.
And, it could be as simple as saying, hey, we're giving everyday Australians, better, or easier ways to live or something along those lines.
Yep.
Bringing it back to numbers is still very important. That was pretty airy-fairy. But I wanted to talk about, so you are aligned with, a purpose beyond profit, which is, giving water.
Yeah.
How does that dictate? How do those purposes how does that purpose or values dictate what your everyday activities are, or where you source your coffee from, or does it flow back through the manufacturing or the supply of product?
Do you mean from an impacts point or from the
I guess from
the dollars and cents side of
sustainable, maybe a sustainable practice or ethical practice. Or,
yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think for any business that is doing something similar to what we're doing with Sip for Sip, which is very much a cure mentality. So you've obviously got prevention and cure, and prevention might be, as an example, cutting out plastic from all of your supply chain. And our cure kind of mentality is we're going to give resources, i.e. money, to water projects so they can go and fix a water problem. With the prevention side, yeah, definitely. So I work with now, so we've got our own beans, and this is also a reason as to why I pivoted into running our own blend rather than using other ones. It's just whilst we partner with some terrific and amazing and very supportive brands to help us get our brand off the ground, selling their coffee, it's really hard to trace where their coffee's coming from. And not everyone's using fair trade beans and that kind of stuff, which is understandable because it can be A, tricky, really expensive to make it happen, and C, people have just got their own flavors and whatever. So that's totally okay. But we're like, okay, if we're going to have this message around sustainable business and, beans that are here to change the world, we do need to have some attention to detail around the actual product itself in that prevention side of things. So I partnered here with a roaster here on the Gold Coast who was already one of our suppliers, who's an absolute champion. So shout outs to Social Espresso and Burley. Absolute legends.
Nice
Thanks Mitch.
Yeah, legend.
So
Mitch. Drink your coffee every day, man.
Yeah, it's epic. So, and I love the idea of shopping local as well. So it was really important to me to find a roaster here on the Gold Coast and not go to Melbourne or Sydney and find one of the bigger guys that can handle massive volumes and all sorts, and which Mitch can, by the way. So, I said, hey, dude, I want to change over and use my own blend. I need something that's organic and, that we can use in a sustainable way. And he's like, okay, I've got this one ready to go. You can, let's make it happen. And we've got some other ones on the way that we can continue this message of sustainable sourcing and really make sure that all of our products are responsibly put together and all that kind of stuff. We are in the pod space. I wasn't really going to touch pods because they are just landfill, right? Yeah. But I had someone ask me in Sydney, they're like, hey, can you put a whole bunch of pods in our hotel? I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to check this out. And there's this fantastic company here called Catchall Pat on the Gold Coast, again, shopping local. It's 100% completely end-to-end compostable.
Yeah.
Not
pods. Combustible.
Not combustible. So you can chuck them in your compost, right? Yeah. And they're made out of beetroot roots and I think some other plant-based plastic. You can check it all out on our website. But being responsible around that. Our packaging now is all completely compostable. The packaging for the Purpose Coffee's compostable. We've got hero packs for our parcel stuff. So everything is now, you can just throw it all in your compost.
Legendary. That's what I'm talking about. So, it started off, you wanted to make a difference in the world. And then it's like, hang on a minute. I don't have to stop there.
Yeah.
I can make everything sustainable, ethical, and, I guess zero zero traceable too. Like as in nothing left over on that shouldn't be there. On the earth. Probably could have said that better, but I think that's absolutely fantastic. So let's come back to some of the other stories that we were sort of hinted to earlier. And you said that you have a bit of involvement with Living.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's a Gold Coast thing, but man, there's a lot of people supporting him. And thank you, because the stigma of mental health is just. I'm glad to see it being broken down, and mainly in our generation. I think we're pretty much in the same generation here. Whereas the younger crew, they're cool with talking about it. And there's less of a stigma because I think they understand the difference between mental illness. Automatically understand the difference between mental illness and mental health. And so how did you come to get involved with Living?
So it is a bit of a funny story. Well, I think it's a funny story anyway, but yeah, like yourself, I've followed them for a long time. And if anyone out there is not following them, particularly their social stuff is really powerful. Get in on them on Instagram. The hashtag in 8 Week to Speak is starting to really get some great
I'll say that again.
traction.
It ain't week to speak.
So, so I was following them, and I was in my office doing some work one day, and I went through a Facebook feed and doing some work, Facebooking, whatever. I was working, and I saw a post of theirs saying, "Hey, we're looking for facilitators." Job application via video. It closes at 5 p.m. on whatever date it was, and it was like 4:30 that day. When I was looking at it, I went, "Oh, I'd love to do this." And a lot of my work gives me a bit of flexibility in my kind of my day jobs and everything else that I'm involved in. So, I want to have a crack at that. So I was like I was unshaven. I'm like wearing a flannel. Luckily, I've got this really nice poster in my office of all the 17 global goals, the sustainable development. It's huge. It's a big wall thing. So I jumped in front of that on my iPhone. I had my iPhone balanced on a ladder in my office, and quickly did this video, and then had to quickly edit it, do a little bit of editing, clean it up, chucked it on. It had to be on YouTube, so I chucked it on YouTube, and then flicked it off to them at like 10 to 5, thinking, I'm never going to get it, but we'll see what happens. And I was lucky enough to be invited along to a training day with their psychologist and lead facilitator Luke, and some of the team as well, and went through some training with them. And we the next day we had to kind of run through a program, and I guess to see if we cut the mustard. And here I am now doing living workshops in schools, workplaces all over the place. I'm in Sydney tomorrow doing one in a high school. And it can be anywhere from 20 to 400 kids or adults, and having heaps of fun spreading their message. So it's running through they've got their own workshop, and we just facilitate it, put a bit of our own story in there, and it's a massive, it's a humbling experience, and it's I think a massive honour, without sounding too cheesy, to be aligned and being a part of what these guys are doing. So
it really is, mate. It's a huge honour, and I've expressed my interest to Casey about that. Not that I've seen a YouTube story that I have to put up, but I think it's really important. The fact that there is that suicide is being treated as an option by the younger generations, or not just younger generations, by anybody, as a way to deal with the problem at hand, is really saddening. It's proper depressing in some respects if you delve into it too much. But there's some simple things that every one of us can do to help get us out of that funk. You know? And I think if any of us have ever been in that funk and just waited 24 hours, then a beautiful psychologist, Rebecca Ray, actually. I don't know if you remember her from college.
I do remember that name, yeah.
She told a great story about motivation, depression, and all the rest of it, and that it's always in cycles.
Sure.
And that, if we're on that wave, and we're in ups and downs, that, it always goes like this. Always. And depending on how I guess, your personality type. You might be big waves, depending on your daily activities, depending on your nutrition, depending on your sunlight, your sleep. Could be big waves, or it could be, it could be little waves. Yeah. And when you're down, you just got to remember that there's always going to be an up.
Yeah, sure.
It's a very simple thing to remember. Don't worry, there's always going to be an up. And then one thing I always say to any young people that I interact with around this, because I've taught martial arts for children before, and sometimes we have these conversations, is that always remember just how many people actually love you. Like, there's too many people out there that love you, that would would miss you greatly, if you made those terrible decisions to take that option. And so, mate, thank you for being that person. Like getting out there and telling those stories. I think storytelling is really important, and I think that due to social media a little bit and distancing ourselves, but thinking that we're actually closer because of it, we've actually lost a little bit of those storytelling, and for fear of, I guess, exposing ourselves and to judgment.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's definitely living. It's not me. I guess I'm just been invited to be a part of their message and talking the talk for them. We certainly bring a little bit of our own life experience and life story into it, so there is a bit of storytelling. But if anyone else out there has a chance to say good day to the guys at Livin', they'll be really I think really humbled to see that they're a fantastic community of individuals that are all on a shared purpose and journey to make a difference and ultimately smash the stigma that surrounds mental health. It's whilst I've got to be, I guess, I'm not here representing Livin'.
No,
in terms of just what I be careful about what I say, but really they are just a terrific organisation doing amazing things, and we just get to be a part of spreading their message, which is it ain't weak to speak, and let's just keep that movement going.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
And you don't have to speak on camera if you do want to talk about it.
Well, it's just they've got a great brand and they're doing their thing, so it's great. Yeah,
awesome, mate. You said earlier that you've got a new project coming up.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
So, 17X is something that I started this year, which has been a real epic adventure.
Has that got anything to do with Grant Cardone's 10X and you thought that wasn't good
enough
and you're taking it to 17?
Yeah. No, it's got absolutely nothing to do with it's got nothing to do with promising to 10X or 17X your business or your life or anything. Right, there are no grandiose promises.
Okay, cool.
This is about value adding to the world. So 17X is an event program that I created. Ran my first one here on the Gold Coast in April or May. And we just finished an Australian tour where I'm going around the country in a very TEDx-style speaking event to engage, educate, and impact the world through the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So basically what we do is we get 4 speakers from each city that are all driving and running for-profit social enterprises, or purpose-driven brands. So not charities, but businesses that are doing great things in the world, but are also making money, to basically showcase that, hey, it doesn't have to be left up to the charitable, space. Governments are too bloody slow and a lot of red tape. Big business, they're doing great things. So are some governments, but it's a slow-moving beast. Small business, we're agile. We can create change really fast. And there are great ways and opportunities for us right now to be able to create amazing brands, amazing business opportunities that are driven by purpose. And the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a terrific place to start. I get a lot of small business owners that I work with on a day-to-day basis that say, look, I'm just a small business. What can I actually do? These are global goals. They're global issues. Okay, well, let's make them local that then create global change.
Think like a global, but act local.
Exactly that. Yeah. So, look, the whole premise came from me wanting to do more public speaking. So, with my consulting business, I was like, all right, I'm working at a Cobbacai. I have zero network. I need to meet more people. I hate networking. So how do I meet more people? Okay, there's 2 growth hacks I can do. One, I'll start a podcast. So I started a podcast. And then the other one was I need to do some more public speaking. So I rang up a speakers bureau in Brisbane and said, hey, this is who I am and what I'm doing. I'm looking for some speakers gigs. Can you guys help me out? I'm happy to speak for free for a few years just to, get myself out there. These are my topics. And she's like, well, what kind of speaking have you done before? And, I talked her through, anything from groups of 20 up to 400 in different training centres, youth groups, training at work, right through to emceeing weddings. I was just like, look, I've kind of done a fair bit. I'm okay on a mic. I can stand in front of a crew. Have you got any video was her next question. And I said, no, I don't have any film. There's probably a film of me half pissed emceeing a wedding somewhere, but I wasn't going to send her that. And she said, I'll never forget it. And I reckon I'm going to remember this because it's a driving point for 17X to a piece. And she said, just because your friends and family say you can speak doesn't mean you can speak. And I was like, fuck you, was my answer. Was what I wanted to say, but I didn't. And where that kind of got me, I was like, it pissed me off about humans to a point. I was like, you don't even know me. How dare you say that? Like, how do humans say that to someone? Just because you think you can do something doesn't mean you can. So go away until you can prove it to me through X, Y, or Z. And that was the message that I got out of it. And I was like, okay, I said, okay, thanks for your time. See you later. And I'm going to find you in 5 years' time and we're going to have a conversation.
Mate, you know what? I agree with her. I actually agree with her.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it fired you up. Continue, please.
Well, so it kicked me into gear a bit and I went, all right, I don't have time to ring and get that many no's, which is a part of, I guess, entrepreneurship. You're going to get slapped in the face a lot of times. Yeah. And quite rightly, I understand where it comes from her to a point, from a business sense. But from a human sense, I was like, Anyway, so I went, okay, I'll just create my own event. Screw this. I'll just get on stage and speak. What am I going to speak about? Okay, I don't want to just speak with me because people aren't going to come and see me. So I need some other speakers. What am I going to talk about? What do I like? And started thinking about, okay, what do I like out there in this space? So TED, everyone loves TED videos, TEDx, blah, blah, away we go. Okay, let's create. So the original idea was to create a whole day summit with 17 speakers, one each speaking to one of each of the goals, and then have a keynote at the end. And run like a trade show summit on the side of it. That's a big day. Yeah. So here's my grandiose brain just kicking off, going, I'm going to do this and this and this, and we're going to run it in September 2019. This is in April. So I start how do I need to get hold of the UN because they're the UN sustainability. So I'm like, how do I ring the UN? And started, I tell this funny shit. Like I got this Google slide on my keynote for it. How do I ring the UN? And apparently you can't ring the UN in Australia. I thought there was like an embassy version of the UN, the UN's embassies all over the world.
I've never Googled it, mate. So.
You can't ring them. All right, that's not going to work. I'll figure out that later. There are some the UNAA bodies around the place. They're a little bit tricky to get a hold of, but that's cool. So started that. Went, okay, I need a really cool keynote. Who's really big in the SDG space? Book Richard Branson for speaking. So emailed his team, got in a reply back, and we started talking. Where am I going to hold it? It's got to be the Gold Coast Convention Centre. Can't be anywhere else. So I'm like literally top tier everything. I got no money, got nothing to do. And then
the cheapest place to hold.
And they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. And they obviously got excited because I'm going, I'm going to do this and this and blah, blah. And away we go. And I go, okay, I need some sponsors. Started reaching out to Patagonia and Atlassian and all these massive brands. Hey, this is what I'm doing. And then very quickly I got, hey, who are you from these guys? Richard Branson's team were like, yeah, well, we can talk about it. What do you need to know and how to do it? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a bit interesting. I thought I'd get the who are you kind of response from them. Yeah. And the convention centre gave me this quote, which was gigantic. Understandable. They're a first class space. And very quickly, the whole event turned into like a $350,000 project that I was apparently going to pull off in 6 months. And so I was like, okay, shit, this isn't going to happen. So very quickly, 17 speakers turned into 4 speakers on the Gold Coast. So I went, all right, let's go MVP model. Let's treat it like a startup. Let's do an MVP or proof of concept, sorry. Start with the proof of concept. Let's just run it out on the Gold Coast. I was hot desking at the Gold Coast Innovation Hub at the time. So shout outs to the GC Hub. Thank you for giving me space for the first ever 17X. So it was 17X Gold Coast. We ran it here at the Hub. I think I got 30 people in the room, which is great. You know, thank you to everyone that came along to that first event. You were absolutely part of something that created a huge impact throughout the year. And by the end of that event, you know, I got 4 speakers in. I did a little talk. They all did their bit, which were great. They talked about their own brands and fulfilled on the intention. We had a little bit of tea and coffee, and that was it. There was no bells and whistles. They paid $19 to be there, and that all went to B1G1 projects. So it's not about me making money. And by the end of that event, I had someone saying, "Hey, when are you coming to Brisbane?" And I went, "Well, I wasn't really thinking about going to Brisbane, but okay." And then a week later, I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Darcy Lunn, who runs a company called Teaspoons of Change. Does a lot of work throughout Asia, but also here in Australia. He's based in Adelaide. And he and his partner, Serafina, when we were talking off air about what we were kind of all up to, and I told them about 17X that I'd just done on the Goldie, and they're like, "Okay, you need to come to Adelaide," because the Teaspoons of Change are all about grabbing the global goals and making them bite-sized, you know, Teaspoons of Change. Terrific organisation, by the way. If you want to understand how to make small things create big impacts, teaspoonsofchange.org. Shout outs to Darcy and Serafina, because those guys were really, yes, the people in Brisbane were saying, "Hey, you need to come to Brisbane," but those guys were really the first partners that I had that said, no, you need to do this. This is going to be awesome. So I had Brisbane and Adelaide teed up 2 weeks after the Gold Coast, and then within a couple of weeks I had the whole Australian tour book. So we just did Gold Coast, Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne. Just finished Melbourne in October. So 4 speakers at each event, amazing speakers, had a host partner in each one. So a company that basically partnered with me to open some doors, help me find venues and whatnot. All the massive partnerships that came out of it, lots of stuff was donated. We aligned with charities so that all profits from the event. So I decided to make sure, okay, whilst we test this, it's not about me trying to make money. I just want to create massive value for the network.
But it's not about you incurring a bucket load of cost either.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And but also the intention was just to go, okay, let's take our hands off the driving wheel, which is really hard for a strategist. The strategy is my wheelhouse. It's what I do for a job. I'm data driven. So to take my hands off and not do any feedback forms, not assess data, no budgets, no nothing. Just go, let's just see what happens. Let's just, let's do this. Okay. And I still haven't done any of that stuff. I'm doing it. I'm slowly going through it now. And what happened was amazing partnerships came out of it, and partnerships of a value transaction. So when I was working with our host partners, and this is one of the key lessons I got, right? And a key lesson for me in business and in general. Working with our host partners, our speakers, we had some amazing brands that were national partners that were promoting us, Global Citizen, Start Some Good, the Banksia Foundation, Buy One, Give One. They were all national partners sending our events out to their national database. Global Citizen have over 1 million followers on social media, and they just ran a music event in New York with 60,000 people. Like, they're massive, and they're going to do some work with us next year. But there's this idea of, okay, let's create a partnership. And my opening pitch was, I'm running this event in Sydney. I'd love for you to partner with me, and I want to know what value can I create for you through the event. And that collaboration of not what can I get, but what can we do together, and that actually fed down into the audiences, was huge. When I becomes we, amazing things happen. And I got all this huge support, and we were trending on LinkedIn from the Brisbane event. It all just went crazy. I was like, this is getting amazing. We had some great stuff happening in Melbourne. So huge lessons learned, and now we're going to 13 cities next year, including Auckland and maybe Singapore. We're going to run a youth version, so we're going to have our 17X tour did 5 cities this year. So 2020 we're going to hit every capital city in Australia. So we're going to Perth and Hobart, the whole lot. We're going to take it on the road. And I'm really excited to be doing an MVP version of a 17X youth, because I think that there's a huge amount of young entrepreneurs out there between 14 and 24 that are already engaged in creating businesses that are doing amazing things.
Absolutely.
And I want to put them on stage because they're the guys that are going to teach us.
Mate, they are.
And they're the guys that are also holding us to account in our business over the next 20 years to make shit happen.
Yeah.
And the 2030 agenda is about them and their kids having a world to not just to receive, but one to work into in a really productive way. So 17X Youth is, I guess, a really exciting addition to the 17X format. Probably just for Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, just while we test it out, because there's only so many events I can fit into 1 year. But yeah, so we'll do 13 events next year off the back of take your hands off and see what happens, which has been really exciting. So I guess that's the exciting stuff that what's on the cards for me next year and the future. And there's a few other little tidbits that are going to happen that's really exciting that I'll wait until maybe some major announcements through socials.
Beautiful. So on that note, how do people stay abreast of what you're up to? Because there's clearly a lot going on here.
Yeah, there is. I know.
So what's the best channel?
Probably LinkedIn. Yeah. Mick Hase on LinkedIn, and it's Hase. I've got websites for everything I do. So sipforsip.com.au, go and order some coffee, change the world. 17sdg.com is the 17X website. So we obviously will have that updated. But at the end of the day, just LinkedIn's a good place to keep connected. We will have some expressions of interest announcements going out very soon for brand partners for each event, sponsors, of course, speakers. But I have no idea where to find the young people that are creating change. And I know that there's, the Young Entrepreneurs Summit, and there are some great young entrepreneurs that are doing stuff there. But I also want to find the guys that are kind of the unsung heroes that are a bit hidden out the back somewhere, that are doing amazing things that no one really is paying too much attention to. Yeah. And I want to grab them and put a light on them. So
if you know them, if you know someone, then shoot Mick a message.
Yeah. So we're I think in the next 2 weeks, all the expressions of interest stuff will go live on all the websites, just so that people can start filling in details and sending them in. Because the first time I did a shout out for speakers, I got 35 responses. Yeah, for the Gold Coast one, it was insane.
It's come a long way, hasn't it? When people were really scared of being on stage to now, they're loving it. Sick.
Oh, it's unreal. And my LinkedIn at the time, I went, I'll just see what happens. And my LinkedIn went nowhere. Yeah. I think I had 7 people connected to me on LinkedIn. I went, hey, looking for speakers on the Gold Coast. If you know anyone that does this, XYZ, 35 people. I was like, oh shit, that went pretty hectic. But definitely LinkedIn, socials, we're all there.
Cool. Thanks so much for your time, Mick. Please let us know how we can add value. Just like we do here on these shows, that we don't get paid. No one pays for this. We're just, I guess, sharing the love.
Yeah.
So thanks for your time, Mick. And keep watching. All the shows are available on memedia.com.au and across all of our socials. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.